Hi everybody, welcome back. We're on the moon today. It's September 24th, 2022. I just wanted to mention real quickly about the last video, mind-altering images about the moon. There were some really great pictures in there. I didn't present it properly, and I'm going to redo that, but there are some really good pictures in there. A lot of people are asking me, or several have asked, what are we looking at when they're looking at these satellite pictures? And so I thought I'd explain for the new viewers that we're looking at pictures that were taken by satellite, and then the pictures are stitched onto the globe, and then we use the worldwide telescope just like Google Earth, and we can go around and see the, move the globe. And also I should mention that in November the new pictures from the Webb telescope are going to be hitting the globe, and it'll be a whole new set of pictures on there, and in theory they would be much more fantastic because of the telescope, but I'm a little more worried about what's going to be, how they're going to obfuscate it actually. So anyway, it doesn't really matter, it seems like most people who watch this stuff, they don't believe it anyway, and I don't blame them. But part of the problem is they don't watch enough. They'll look at a few pictures, maybe scan through the video, but you have to look at much more of this evidence to fully understand. It's the preponderance of all the evidence, not just a few pictures and 3 or 4 minutes of your time. Which reminds me, I recently ran across a quote by somebody by the name of Arther Schopenhauler, and he was a German philosopher, and he said that all truth passes through 3 stages. First, it is ridiculed. He's a crackpot. The second stage is that it is violently opposed. And the third stage is that it is accepted as being self-evident. Pretty funny how that all comes full circle, how that works. So anymore, I get to the point when I go outside, I can't stand looking at the moon. On one hand, it's beautiful and I love it. Here's a beautiful picture of it right here. On the other hand, I know what's there, and the moon is something, completely different for me now. I want to go back to the days of when it was just the moon, when, they wrote songs about it. There's thousands of songs. Fly Me to the Moon, of course, is Frank Sinatra, right? That's a famous one. And then there's Dark Side of the Moon, right? Pink Floyd, that's a little bit more of my era. Neil Young, Harvest Moon, Moon Dance by Van Morrison. I mean, there's really thousands of them. So the moon is really in the human psyche, and we think we know what it is because they've told us and we've seen some pictures. So when something else comes along and try to show what's really there, people can't believe it. And I really can't blame them because we've already been taught. We already know. We've seen the pictures. So there's just no way that could be true, right? But I have a question for you. Do you believe everything our government tells us? Right? If they tell us that there's nothing there and it's just we're going to go there and we're going to land there again and we're going to go mine it, do you believe all that? Or do you just pick and choose what you want to believe from our federal government, right? Here's a quick tutorial again on how to use the World Wide Web. The Worldwide Telescope. I do that all the time. I told you I misspeak all the time. And very simple, super simple to use. And one of the reasons that I do this is because I don't, I'm not real big on showing you where exactly precisely where these things are that I show you. It's not that I don't want to. By the way, Ben Pellom here is he's the fellow that introduced me to the Worldwide Telescope, and as far as I can tell, he was the only one that's been pushing this information. So you got to go see his website, which is right here. He also has a YouTube channel, and that green picture right there is a picture of Uranus, of the polar region of Uranus. And isn't that incredible? I'm not going to take away Ben's thunder. I just wanted to show that picture, but he's got this picture and more on his website, and we can thank Ben for making us aware of all this stuff. I forgot where I was. Anyway, yeah, people just don't believe this stuff because, you know, we've all been taught. We already know everything that we need to know, right? So you know, in these videos that I put together, you know, probably a lot more pictures in my videos than a lot of other YouTubers, but and some pictures are really great and other pictures are not as good. I mean, not every picture can be a 10 and not every video is a 10, you know. Sometimes they're well, sometimes they're just not that great. Now we're here to talk about the concentric rings, and we've talked about it before on this channel, and these are rings that you can only see in the dark craters, and the closer to the pole, the smaller the ring is. And this is just an example. I didn't fill in all the blanks. I just did this freehand, just trying to give you an idea of exactly what I mean by concentric rings. And all of these rings, just like the center, would be filled out all throughout. At one point recently, I said I thought there was about 30 rings. I think there's far more than that. Definitely more than that. So we're going to take a look at what some of these rings look like, and plus we have a few other things to look at as well. And I've talked about making a video before, and I just want to give an example of what it's like to try and show you that. And I'm not going to make a video, it just doesn't make sense. There goes a car again. So these red dots you see going up in a straight line, or where these are examples, are not real, but just how it works, and it shows where I would spot pieces of the concentric line. And then in the gaps in between, I would have to move off to the left or the right. In this case, I moved off to the left to find the pieces of the line in other dark craters that would fill in the gaps of the straight line going up. So there's far more than what I'm showing you here. Even the tight bunch of circles in the middle are much tighter than that, because we have seen actually two concentric rings in one crater, so it can be very, you know, very tight. And in all of this stuff, you know, the case has been made a long time ago that the moon is artificial, and after everything I've seen in the last 6 months, after Ben introduced me to the Worldwide Telescope, I would tend to agree that it must be artificial. There's, yeah, these rings. I don't know what they are. We'll have some more pictures of them. Ben suggested that there was a way of some sort of a conveyance, and maybe that's true. Some of those rings are you know, pretty clear. They look like they could be a means of conveyance. On the other hand, sometimes they're too blocked. There's just so much stuff in there. So right now we're going to go down to this little crater here, and I've mentioned it before. These places that we go, you know, Ben wanted me to be more specific on exactly where they are, and I understand that, because you know, in the past, people find things that they're one-off, and it's real important to know exactly where it comes from. But I challenge you. I've shown you how to use the telescope. You pick any crater, pick any black, any dark area near the poles, and you'll find it yourself. in every one of these craters, there's something to be seen. So it's not a one-off thing. And if you don't believe what I'm showing you in this video, for instance, challenge me. Go get on the Worldwide Telescope and go look for yourself. You'll find it everywhere. It's not hard to find. So I definitely understand wanting to know precisely where it is, but it's just one of many, many, many places, you know. So I again, get on the telescope and go look, and start getting a hold of these other YouTubers and get them on this thing too, because this might, you know, the use of this telescope, once they put the new pictures on, it may go away. So we need people to get out there. Now we're looking at the tip of this crater here. We're not looking at the whole crater, just the tip. And then we're going to be looking on the left side of it and the right side of it. So yeah. So here's a concentric line. It was just in the very tip of this crater. And we're not looking at any more of the crater, just this right here. And this is one of the more unique ones that we've seen. And not only is there the concentric line here, but the pattern of everything else around it is also really incredible. Very, very similar to a pattern that we've seen before, that we were actually able to figure out. And everything you see here on both sides of this line are cylindrical buildings by the hundreds or thousands, by the thousands for sure. And it's hard to make sense of this picture. It really is. So I'm just going to concentrate on the line. And off to the right-hand side of this line, you see some big things going over there. I mean, you know, this almost looks like some kind of an electrical circuit or something, or, you know, like a chip, or, you know, something like that. I can't think of what I'm trying. Not a chip, but circuitry anyway. Very, very unusual. But everything is made out of buildings, right? It's always the case. So we're going to move off to the right here. And sometimes you can see that concentric line in the lighter area. Only fleeting glimpses here and there once in a while, and it's never bold. It's always very, very faint, but you can see it. Now this concentric line is sort of a run-of-the-mill typical one. It looks like a coil actually running down there. Not a lot to look at in that picture. And then we're moving more to the right. And now this area here doesn't have any concentric lines, but it was interesting enough that I thought we should stop and take a look. It's definitely different than other craters that we've looked at. It does have similarities, and this is always the case. You know, they're very similar, but different. Every crater is different. It's almost like a fingerprint in a way, but there are similarities. Now we're not looking at the large structures on the left-hand side. We're looking on the right-hand side of this picture. And what I've noticed is that there are rows and rows and rows of structures that come down from the top to the bottom, or from the bottom to the top, however you want to look at it. And these are crazy rows, right? They're not just perfectly straight rows. They're crooked, they meander a little bit, but they do stay in their own rows. And sometimes a building in one row will stretch over to a building in the other row, but generally speaking, each one of these rows is they stay, you know, the buildings stay to themselves for the most part. And it's funny how these rows are so you know, a little bit meandering. They're just not straight. They might start out at the top real wide and come down to a point, and then the row next to it will start as a point and come down to a wide section. You see these rows? And there's a ton of buildings in here, so pretty good clarity. Yeah, and you just have to just kind of, I guess, relax your eyes a little bit and just, you know, start at the top, find some buildings, and follow the row all the way down. It might start out wide, get skinny, get wide again. And many times it just starts out wide and gets, by the time you get down to the bottom of it, it's a point. Row after row like this. This is very unusual. Now, not unlike all the other pictures that we've looked at of the craters, these larger rectangular looking structures are, as we've said before, made out of much smaller buildings. So each one of these that looks like a long rectangular building is actually I wish I'd come up with a great term for it, but they're made up of rows of smaller buildings. And overall, they give you the impression that they're big buildings. And then when they do this crazy stuff, you know, like this here, I don't know what to say. But I will say, I think the goal is, in every crater, in every case, that eventually they'll be covered over entirely with those larger looking structures. This darker picture here lets you see these rows pretty good, and off to the right, you know, look to the right. Yeah, it's just weird, you know. You would expect it to be very, very orderly because, you know, because look, these people are alien, right? And they have been here for millions of years. Millions of years. We know that by looking at every place else in the solar system. Places like Venus, like Dione, everywhere. They're covered with buildings. And Mars isn't completely covered, but it's getting there. So it has to take many millions of years for this to come to be. And, you know, these guys, you know, they've been doing this a long time. And by the way, which reminds me of the big issue here, right? The big issue is how is it possible that this stuff is here and that we can't see it? And the answer is, I don't know. What I do know is they have technology so far ahead of us that the idea of a, you know, this is a really wild filter here. I thought I'd throw those in. But the idea of a big, you know, of something covering it up, some sort of an illusion that they've put out there, a hologram, whatever the case may be, I don't think that's crazy at all. These people have been around a long time, you know, and it's not, you know, what they know, the information and knowledge they have to us would seem godlike. Okay, here we go back. We're going to another concentric line in this triangular area here. We're going to look at the top right area of this dark triangular area here. And this is a real odd part of the globe because it was right on the seam and I couldn't get it to move the way I wanted to. So anyway, it's kind of hard to explain, but sometimes you can't position that globe the way you want to. And another sort of a mostly nondescript line. These concentric lines can be really crazy or they can be very, very plain as well. And this picture here, the part that interested me is not the line, but what goes along the left side of this white area. These are a cluster of tall cylindrical buildings. We've seen this a number of times. You can see the black openings towards the top of the building, whether it's an opening or a window. They all have it, whether it's facing us or not. That's what these black dots are. I think they're large square openings or windows. I'm not sure. We've seen other types of buildings with big, long black stripes that are windows. So I don't know about these ones for sure. And now we're off to the left side of the crater that we started off in. And this is also a really incredible picture of a very complicated concentric line here. and there's some pretty good clarity too. So I have quite a few different looks on you know, trying to get in there and get the best pictures as possible. So some are dark, some are light, whatever. But yeah, look at all those. Look at this line. So this concentric line here is made up of buildings, just like everything else always is. And they're exactly the same. They're perfectly lined up. And why would they do that? You know, is it some sort of a power generating whatever? You know, these buildings in the line here, in some of these pictures, this one here, a lot of those buildings, you can see the dark opening at the top, or the dark window, whatever it is. So they're just buildings. They're not, you know, something else. And there's a lot of buildings on both sides of this line. These are not as industrial looking at all, or it looks a lot more like you know, like possibly residential, but it's definitely packed in there, and there's a lot of shadow involved here too. So, and this line, this is under construction, almost dead center, just a little bit to the left. You can see where they're still working on it, and there's actually a number of areas that they're still working on this line. Dead center here, you can see it's interrupted there, and there's things going on in there. A little bit of sort of a disarray look, and you know, since everything is in you know, perfect order, whenever you see disarray, it means, you know, something going on there. So here again, you can see the area that they're working on. Yep, so anyway, you know, as far as the 3 stages of truth, I think when it comes to this kind of thing, that we're somewhere between the first and second stage, ridiculed crackpot, and then the second stage is violently opposed. So we're somewhere in the middle of that. We shouldn't be, though, because I've shown you how to use that darn telescope. I challenge anybody who thinks this isn't real to go find it for themselves. It's far too easy, which is another reason why it's so unbelievable. And this has been true with much of the images that I've had on my channel. There's so much of it, it just makes it hard to believe. But, you know, like I said, we know everything we need to know about the moon, right? We've seen the pictures. We know there's nothing there, right? Nothing there. I recently, in the beginning of this video, there's some pictures of the moon, and one of those pictures is very similar to another picture where I showed structures covering the surface of the moon, not just the craters, but the outside surface. And this other picture is a different picture, it's a different angle, and guess what? It shows the same thing and the same structures. So I'm going to be bringing that picture out, and we're going to be taking another look at that. But it's really nice to have a different picture, different angle, and confirming what you found in the first one. So I'm very excited about that. Now this concentric line is has a tight curve on it because it's so close to the pole. Look at this now. What in the heck? This is a really complicated and this very fat things in the line. You know, I can't, it's hard even to see those as structures. As you go to the left down the line, you can see individual structures more so than in these white blobs. It's hard to say what they are. And we have on other occasions seen rows of buildings going over the top of the concentric line, just like we see right here in the middle. And a pretty good view of the buildings behind, and you can even see some tall structures coming down from the 11 o'clock position back there in the background. Another concentric line with a tight curve on it. Again, it's fairly close to the pole, so the closer you get, the tighter the curve. Another concentric line, just another average line, not really looking at it. This round crater, I'm not getting into it, but it's similar to the craters that we saw in the video Dizzyland. And this is just a random crater out there somewhere, just one I just happened to look in on just for the heck of it. And sure enough, there was a line going through that one too. This one's quite a bit farther out from the pole. Nothing interesting, just another crater with a line in it. And this is why I don't want to do a video of it, because it's the same thing over and over. Anyway, I hope you liked the video. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.